the Zoning Board of Appeals public hearing, August 8th, 2023. We have Board Member Luke Farren here in person with Joyce Giffra and myself, Mark Greenwald, Chairman. We also have via Zoom Tom Kempner and Julia McCormick. Board Member Julia McCormick is unable to attend this evening. We also have in person our legal counsel, Jeffrey Blinkoff, as well as our village planner, Alex Wallach. We do not have this evening our environmental consultant, Chick Voorhees. We're going to do some housekeeping with respect to the dates of our public hearings. I would like to create a motion that we will be canceling the upcoming Zoning Board of Appeals public hearing scheduled for August 24th, as well as canceling the Zoning Board of Appeals public hearing for Tuesday, is that October 10th?
October 10th.
October 10th, where the board will be attending training. So I will make that motion, and can I have a second?
Second.
Then all in favor of canceling the August 24th public hearing as well as the October 10th public hearing, please say aye.
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 Aye. Tom, are you in favor?
Aye, yes.
With respect to our agenda this evening, we have one written decision, and that is case number 3157, Sakura Realty LLC, 131 Flying Point Road. A decision has been drafted and circulated to the board members, and I will motion to accept the decision as written in case number 3157, Sakura Realty LLC, approving the request for variance relief in case number 3157. Can I have a second to approve the decision as written?
Second.
And all in favor of approving the decision as written in case number 3157, Sakura Realty LLC, please say aye.
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 And so that is unanimous. And just document that. We have pending cases. I will motion to remove from the agenda case number 3104, Town and Village of Southampton, 51 Pond Lane. It was pending ARB approval or hearing, but nothing has been done for an extended amount of time, so I am going to motion to remove from our agenda case number 3104, 51 Pond Lane. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor of removing from our written agenda, case number 3104, 51 Pond Lane, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
So that is unanimous. Moving on, we have case number 3144, where the applicant, Stephen Hickey, with an address at 1377 Meadow Lane, has requested an adjournment to September 12th, 2023. I would motion to accept the applicant's request for adjournment to September 12th, 2023. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor of accepting the applicant's request for adjournment in case number 3144, please say aye.
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 So we have that unanimous. Then in case number 3153, Smithtown Partners, 40 Meadow Lane, we have a request for an adjournment from the applicant to adjourn to September 12th, 2023.
And we
This-
have the applicant in the waiting room on Zoom.
Oh, that would be even better. I will motion to accept the applicant's request for adjournment, but is he available so that, is it Michael?
Yep, and you
Can
can
we
let
bring Michael in?
yes, and you can let Chick in as well. Thank you.
Chick is here then?
Yep, he's being admitted now.
Michael, are you stationary?
I am stationary. I got caught on a cross run for a while this afternoon, but I am stationary.
So we're going to motion to accept the request for adjournment. We do request if you're going to adjourn again in September that you appear in person pursuant to our adjournment procedures. And we would, or the legal counsel will reach out to you. I understood from one of our prior public hearings that you had some objections to a personal visit, a visit by members of the board to the premises. And we still have that request, but it's possible that in lieu of that, you could provide us with certified floor plans of all of the floors, ground floor, first floor, second floor, third floor. If an architect or an engineer or any professional could certify the as-built interior condition of the premises, it's possible then the board could find a way to forego a personal visit. I'm not sure until we see those floor plans, but at least that offers a possible alternative.
Okay, I'll take that under advisement and speak to my client about it.
So for the time being, I motion to accept the applicant's request for a third adjournment to September 12th, 2023 in the case of Smithtown Partners, case number 3153, 40 Meadow Lane. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank-
I have a question just for clarification in the record. What is the, procedure for the maximum number of adjournments for an applicant?
After two, normally they would be appearing to ask for the adjournment in person. I think because it was just recently posted to the website, that the board was working through that this time, but I think it's the third time they've be asked to appear.
Okay.
And then
Thank
is
you.
there a maximum?
There is not. After that, it's up to the board in terms of whether or not you would grant and what type of new notice you would require.
Okay, thank you.
So moving on, in case number 3156,
Thank
Eiffel.
you, everyone.
Thank you, Michael. Eiffel Residence, 2020 Meadow Lane. We have a request from the applicant, a second adjournment request to adjourn to September 12th, and I'll motion to accept the applicant's request for adjournment to September 12th. Can I have a second?
Second.
And then all in favor of accepting the applicant's request for adjournment in case number 3156, 2020 Meadow Lane, say aye.
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 So that's unanimous. And we can move on to our pending case, 1430 Meadow Lane, 3158, case number 3158, 1430 Meadow Lane.
John Bennett for the applicant. While you're doing adjournments, though, I just wanted to make, on number 7, Robert Kornstein and Shari Gottesman, the agenda says applicant requests second adjournment September 12th. I'm not requesting the adjournment. I was told that there wouldn't be a quorum.
Correct.
So
Change
if you
that.
could just make sure that that's
Sure.
not there. I just don't want to be penalized. Because you remember, you have 2 people that recuse themselves on that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's, if you want, we can go right into 1430 Meadow Lane. So my name is John Bennett. I'm here for the applicant, Bennett and Reed, 212 Windmill Lane, Southampton, New York. Bruce Sprano, the project architect, is with me. Bailey Larkin from Bennett and Reed also. John Kuchia from Coral Brothers, and John Avedon. When we were last here, the board requested 3 specific items, and we provided them on August 3rd. One was a cross-section of the residence showing where the coastal erosion hazard line bisects the house. Now, all of these proposed expansions that are the subject of the variance application are seaward of the coastal erosion hazard line, but the board wanted to see where the coastal erosion hazard line bisected the house, so we provided that. Then we also provided structural plans for the proposed foundation, and we've submitted an amended cost estimate based upon addressing the foundation plans, and John Kuchia submitted that and prepared that for you. And then finally, at Luke's request, we showed an alternate expansion plan for the second floor, which quite clearly simply does not work. The alternate layout for the third floor simply programmatically doesn't work. It would result in significantly diminished views, almost eliminating the views of the to the north or to the Shinnecock Bay from the existing great room, a detriment to the owner. It's an unnecessary detriment, and given the standard, not something that the standards in the New York State Village Law and the judicial gloss on that, not something that the owner should have to be faced with. So, as we already presented the prior hearings, this is a modest application, an extremely modest application, seeking relief from heightened pyramid restrictions to permit construction of a proposed two-story addition, a total of 620 square feet in size, not all of which needs variance relief. So that it's 620 square feet. Not all of it needs variance relief, but some of it does, and we've parsed that out. I think it's my position, which would be could not be contradicted by even someone with a glancing knowledge of the standards, that the board has the obligation at this point to demonstrate some detriment to the public, and it simply hasn't done so. Merely reciting the code doesn't meet that standard. There's absolutely no environmental impact from this. The rear deck of the house, which is the closest part of the house to the ocean, is 240 feet from the crest of the dune. The proposed addition is 335 feet from the crest of the dune. So in terms of impact on any of those things that you look at, there's none. The house itself, in terms of any impact on the sense of place or viewscape from the road, the proposed additions are 290 feet from the roads, about a football field. So this is going to blend in, and no one is going to even notice that this this very modest request is here. It's supported by the neighbors on either side. And that's not surprising because the addition is well seaward of the location of the existing homes on either side. And what you do, if you go back and look at, this case is coming right out of the granddaddy of all cases, the Euclid case. What's zoning about? It's to protect surrounding property owners. So it's not surprising that the adjoining neighbors on either side have no objection to this, because the whole reason for pyramid laws and sky plains laws and side yard setbacks is so that it'll not have any effect on light and air on the adjoining properties. Well, those adjoining properties' homes are fully to the south of the proposed addition. So none of the harms that zoning is meant to allay are at all witnessed in this application. The applicants are requesting a mere 1,155 cubic feet of relief from the sky plane requirements for the second floor addition, and an infinitesimal portion on the first floor portion. 2 lots to the east, this board gave a 44,360 square foot cubic foot variance, and that was under the same standards contained in the village code, same standards contained in the New York State law. So again, we've decided this to be located entirely north of the coastal erosion hazard line. We have demonstrated that the existing home and the current property's ownership, 2001, predates several amendments to the village code, and that prior to these amendments, the addition would have been as of right. So what is important is none of the difficulty here is self-created. The primary benefit sought is the proposed second floor addition. This keeps all bedrooms in the same area of the house without any reworking of the existing floor plan, such as this alternate shifting this third bedroom to the center of the house, which devastates the views from the great room, and there's no need for it. Any other location for the second floor expansion would require similar, if not identical, relief, and impact living space within or impact living space within the home. No proposed increase in the number of bedrooms. Very, very small attempt to give a little bit more breathing room on some of these bedrooms and maintain their view of the Shinnecock Bay, which is an appropriate benefit, not at all counterweighed by any negative impact to the neighborhood or to the public. Relief from the height restrictions is requested to construct this 9-foot deep addition. It's only 9 feet off the north side of the second floor at the same elevation as the existing roof line. You remember, this has a section where there's a gabled roof, and then it works to the north. We're going to meet the existing flat roof line, and we'll be, the total height requested is 6'1", but it's still lower than the highest point of the building. So again, that's generally seen as a modest request. And again, not only did the variance for 1400 Meadow Lane to the east allow for a 44,360 cubic feet of relief, but 1323 Meadow Lane, there was a 17,691 square feet of cubic relief allowed. This is a mere, what did I say, 1,155 cubic feet of relief. And what was involved in those is that the understanding was that, of course, these lots and the houses on them predated 3 separate laws. The village law took away the 2-foot of freeboard. They imposed sky plan requirements, and then they also said that I think 85% of the house has to be gabled. In other words, in order to get the 35 as opposed to the 28-foot high requirement. So that's all important and demonstrate that there's simply no negative impact to the character of the neighborhood, the community, the neighbors. No objection from the neighbors. Further, we've included in the 2008 submission a study that we have conducted of several of the surrounding homes. The study demonstrates that the character of the neighborhood is fairly defined by residents as they're non-compliant with sky plan restrictions. Almost no houses comply. So again, that's indicia of no, there's very strong indicia of no impact to the neighborhood. The benefit of the applicant is clear. The applicant seeks to expand the existing residence to allow for larger second-floor bedrooms, very, very minor. We're told to keep the application as minor as possible. Indeed, the chairman at one point even acknowledged that it's a very, very minor request in terms of increasing the bedroom size. And I would submit that you take a look at the Baker versus Brownlee case, 670 NYS 2nd 216, which is a second department case, which we've talked about, in which if there's a benefit, a recognizable benefit, and here it's to get some more living space and yet not destroy the views to Shinnecock Bay, which after all is one of the reasons why people buy homes on Meadow Lane and have views not only of the ocean but of Shinnecock Bay. That's the benefit. It's incumbent on the board to demonstrate some negative impact either on the environment, which is not as a type 2 action. We've demonstrated we're well far away from the dunes. There's no wetlands issues. And simply no impact to the neighborhood. And some people say, oh, well, you got letters of support from the neighbors. I gave you 2 separate cases that I personally litigated in which both the Appellate Division 2nd Department and the Supreme Court of Suffolk County, one of which was against this board, said that that's probably the best indicia of no impact on the character of the neighborhood if you have letters of support. We have some cost estimates, which again I've characterized as merely icing on the cake, even without those cost estimates, which demonstrate that doing this 1-story addition, which doesn't get the benefit that the applicant wants, would nevertheless be more expensive. I didn't even need to put that in there, and I think it would have more than amply met the standard, but I wanted to demonstrate to you that the record is full and complete, and you should not have any issue whatsoever in granting this relief. It's not going to create any sort of precedent. If anything, you have precedent to either side of this property, which is much, 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 much more significant. 44,000 cubic square feet and 17,000 cubic square feet. Not a substantial request. This is candidly a request that I think, in my experience, you'd have a hard time denying because you don't really have any countervailing negative impact to this. You can't just say, oh, well, the law says we've changed the law and we want you to comply to that law. That's the whole reason why this board exists, because you take a look at the property, you take a look at the fact that it's so far back from the street, you take a look at the fact that there's no negative environmental impact, you take a look at the fact that the neighbors are in support, that there's no impact on the community. That's the stuff you're supposed to weigh. So when you weigh all this stuff, when you take the benefit to the applicant, you've got to have something there that says there's something negative here, and there's nothing in the record that says that. So, and again, no self-created hardship here, because all these amendments to the village code were enacted well after the ownership of the property. So there we are. I think we're done, unless the board has any questions. And we think you have more than enough to grant this variance and would ask that you do so. I'm just waiting to answer any questions you have, if you have them.
Well, we do have questions. You'll notice during your presentation, nobody interrupted you. When we ask questions or have concerns, please reciprocate, okay? Do you want to go with your response to no environmental impact, or I can start with some questions I have?
Sorry.
My comments, which you alluded to with respect to extending 2 bedrooms, essentially 3 feet, was intended to put this into context. The context being the board is directed to weigh the benefit to the applicant against any detriment to the neighborhood or the community. That's a succinct way of putting it. What I was pointing out was the applicant already has views of the bay. So discussing alternatives where they are losing those views, to me, is irrelevant. The point I was making was it seems that the benefit is somewhat minimal, meaning that they're only extending 2 bedrooms 3 feet. That's a minor benefit. If there is detriment, to my point of view, and we'll see if other board members agree with me, there isn't a lot of detriment that would outweigh such a small benefit to the applicant. They already have the views. They just want bedrooms to be not 13 feet deep, but 16 feet deep, if I understand it correctly. So that was my point. Not that they're asking for so little, why not grant it, but that on one side of the scale, the benefit was so small that it's possible the board will find that it's easy to outweigh that benefit with any detriment. The other questions I have really are not necessarily for you, John, but for the architect, because I had some concerns about the elimination of a garage and a site plan that shows 3 parking spaces in the driveway. So what I'd like to ask the architect is, can you provide us with a survey showing that those 3 driveway parking spaces can actually be accomplished and will be accomplished? In other words, is it part of the plan? Because when I looked at the photos submitted, the driveway as it exists right now is bordered by Belgian block and is very narrow. So in some way, it seems that the architect plans to expand a portion of that driveway. But we don't have the dimensions for it, we don't have a survey. So maybe you could provide that, or you could arrange for the surveyor to show with setbacks, with new landscaping, how exactly 3 parking spaces are going to be accomplished. Because one of my concerns, again, I haven't finished my balancing, but in response to your presentation where you said we have to show some detriment, one of the potential detrimental factors I'm considering is eliminating a garage and having 10 vehicles parked outside on the property, 3 of which are going to move into a driveway. Is that part of the character of our Oceanside community? Is that something that we see? Is 10 parking spaces with 10 cars something that could rise to the level of a detriment that, along with other possible detrimental factors, would outweigh the somewhat minimal benefit. That's some of my concerns. So if we saw a survey and we could show that, you know, it's possible to do that because it's very narrow next to that neighbor. The rest, I think, had to do with, and I don't mean the rest, one of the other issues that I think we were looking at with the building department had to do with not the fact that the ultimate expansion is south of the coastal erosion hazard line, but that to accomplish that expansion, there is a substantial amount of construction activity south of the coastal erosion hazard line. And when we read the zoning code is specifically concerned with construction activity. It's not concerned with the end result, which you've presented as the measuring stick. The zoning code talks about how much construction activity occurs south of the coastal erosion hazard line. And we're looking into that as a possible detrimental effect. We're asking the building department to take another look because it appears that the building department and this board did not receive a foundation plan until we asked for it. You had one, but we would have preferred that that foundation plan be presented along with your other site plans, surveys, et cetera, because it rises to the level of a possible detrimental effect by executing this proposed project. The other comment I would make, and then I'll defer to my other board members, is I am unclear about why we even entered into the record a cost comparison between the project that you wanted to do and has a benefit to the applicant and another project that you are saying is not feasible, meaning that it doesn't provide the same benefit. It seems to, from my point of view, have confused the record. Usually if we're talking about a cost comparison, it's a cost comparison between two ways in which the applicant can accomplish the same benefit. We have hours of dialogue and documentation, substantial documentation with respect to a cost comparison between the project that accomplishes the benefit that the applicant seeks and a project that doesn't. So there was really little or no reason to analyze the costs of a project that didn't provide the same benefit. That's where I am on this application for now.
Do you want me to respond to you, or wait until the other board members?
No, let's
talk?
wait for,
Okay.
let's collect all our comments.
John, you submitted the transcript from our first hearing in June. Are you going to submit July's as well?
Yep.
Okay. Bruce, I have a construction methodology question for you, if you don't mind coming up.
So I don't answer a construction methodology question. It's not my purview as a licensed architect in New York State.
Okay.
I'm not in charge
But you
of
can,
reviews and
you should ask the question though, Luke.
Okay.
Can I just ask anybody who speaks, just if you could come through the mic, just because there's.
No problem.
Yeah, we know you, Bruce, but
No,
for the
I'm happy
record.
to speak into the mark, to the mic, Mark. So Bruce Sperano, architect of record, licensed architect in New York State. So Luke, architects are not responsible for the means and methods of constructions, and that's in the AIA contract. You probably know that.
I guess I just, well, hear me out, and if you don't feel comfortable answering, then don't answer. It's, Bruce, you've seen helical piles being driven on construction sites before. I have no doubt that these 7 on the north side of the property will be driven with very limited disturbance to both the house-built construction and the property, the landscape, and all that. The one along the eastern edge is going to be a little bit tighter, but when I cross-reference the structural engineering plan from Delandro Andrews, who does all of my structural work, I know their quality is impeccable. I trust their drawings. I just wonder how those piles, let's compare first floor foundation plan to second floor framing plan. On the second floor framing plan, there's many notes about doing the best we can to protect installed construction and the existing framing of the second floor, right?
Sorry.
Well, so, okay, so Paul,
Construction means or method.
Okay.
I thought I was clear about that.
Maybe ask it as an affirmative question if I can, Luke. So I'm
Okay.
just trying to get the answer. from
okay,
you, yeah.
I just don't see how those piles on the southernmost edge of your scope of work get driven without substantial intervention in the existing structure of the house.
You're saying they're too close to the house?
Well,
Because,
so
you know,
he has
people-
the he
I
has
got-
the pile specified as 10-foot piles,
Mhm.
right? Now there are machines that can do it in very tight areas,
Mhm.
but it's not as if this can be done by pulling one of those machines into the garage and driving the first pile and then adding the specified extender. It's going to have to come from overhead, right? So there is going to have to be some level of substantial removal of both the roof of the structure and the second floor of the structure. Whether they do that directly from the north, sort of completely taking apart the existing garage, or they come from the east and reach over the house with a larger machine, you know, that starts to get into what Mark alluded to, which was affecting the dunes and the landscaping. If you agree, if you disagree, Bruce, like tell me how you plan to do it.
I disagree, Luke. How many feet are we away from the dune?
Oh, no, I think what you're talking about, and I'm sorry, I don't want to put words in
Yeah.
There's not the effect on the dune. As a matter of fact, you said you're probably going to do it in a careful way to have no effect on the dune and no effect on the houses. You've got two piles that are close to the existing exterior of the house. And how are you going to get in there to implement them, to put those in? Is that?
I guess my most highest level comment is that the extent of actual construction and intervention in the project is greater than the net result is that you argue is minimal.
Okay,
And I'm with you in the minimal nature of a 3-foot extension, but I do think that the actual construction is much more than that and may warrant, and like Mark said, we're talking to the building department about it, may warrant another look at the level of variances that you're seeking.
Let me respond to that. You understand that's totally outside of your purview.
We don't think so.
Well, let me respond,
Okay.
like you weren't going to interrupt, I wasn't going to interrupt you, please don't interrupt me. The building inspector is the coastal erosion permit administrator.
That's right.
So what the building inspector has to do is make sure that there's no violence done to the coastal erosion hazard area limits, and all of the innate and specific strictures that are put on that law. We're not here asking for any relief from the coastal erosion hazard law. So we have to satisfy, not you, on the implementation and the construction methodology. Who we have to satisfy is the building inspector, who, pursuant to the village coastal erosion hazard area law, is the coastal erosion permit administrator.
Correct.
And it's not just what you find in the village code, but it's also what you find in the various bulletins and the state regs. So we're confident that Tin, or whoever he's designated to be the coastal erosion permit administrator, will be satisfied with the construction methodology and make sure none of that is done, no damage is done to that law.
Right.
That is not your purview. We're asking for no relief whatsoever from the coastal erosion hazard law. So as a matter of law, that's not part of what you look at. What you look at is really whether or not a variance from the sky plane regulations and the height regulations
Right.
are here. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about any of that stuff. I understand, you know, your concern about it, but we're confident that we can do it in a
Jeffrey,
way.
can I ask you this question? Even if something doesn't rise to the level of requiring, in the viewpoint of the building inspector, even if it doesn't rise to the level of requiring a coastal erosion hazard permit, can the board still consider as a detriment in its balancing the construction methodology and the procedures involved in creating this 3-foot extension? Can we look at that and say, yes, maybe the 3-foot extension, you know, has certain detrimental effects on the neighborhood, but we also think that the process has a detrimental effect? Is it something that we can consider as a balancing?
Yes, I think the board can, for several reasons. You know, Mr. Bennett, what I'd ask is if you could hold laughing at me to some other time. Because it really does, I find it a little bit insulting, and I appreciate that you may disagree with me, and I get it,
Incredibly so.
and that's fine. You've made that very clear with the laughter, but if you could just hold that, I'd appreciate it. And if the board looks at the 5 factors, one of them is the impact on the environment, one of which I think would do with the construction. But putting that aside, I don't think there's anything wrong with the board developing its own record. Mr. Bennett, as he's made very clear by his actions, statements, and body language, disagrees with the manner in which the board is proceeding. But it's the board's choice as to make out its record. If the board has questions about a plan that came in that was received recently, I assume that the engineer took the time to prepare those plans, that is a professional in the field. I think the board should be able to ask those questions. It may be that after the record is complete, the board will agree with Mr. Bennett and feel that there's that is not a part of the determination, but the record should be developed.
Well, that's no different than having a comment about something within the building inspector's jurisdiction. You don't, as a zoning board of appeals, have the authority to ask a building inspector whether or not that building inspector on a particular project is complying with the state building code. This is so far outside of your jurisdiction. You're straining, it's really obvious. Whether or not this work is going to comply with the coastal erosion hazard area.
We're not saying that. I just said that wasn't my question. Okay. I said even if it doesn't rise to the level of requiring, in the viewpoint of our building department, to the level of requiring a coastal erosion hazard permit, are we still, as part of our deliberations, allowed, or is it reasonable to look at that as a detrimental effect?
Absolutely not. It's not
Okay,
one of the
you're
5
saying
factors.
absolutely not, and if
not
you
one of the
were
5
our
factors.
counsel, I would listen to you more.
Well, it's not
you
one
know,
of the 5 factors.
So fine, our counsel is saying that we can weigh it, and we may if we
But
want
it has some
to.
authority for that.
So fine, okay? Why don't we move on?
Well, just to complete the thought, Bruce, you don't feel comfortable answering the question. I don't think that the folks at Coral can construct the plan as specified. You're gonna be the guy called to,
So
you know, they'll send you the RFI.
the drawings that I submitted to this board
Right,
were stamped and signed by me, and
Right.
those drawings speak for themselves.
right.
And I'm happy to put that drawing up for the record, and you can see the section that you requested, the addition that we're putting on.
Right.
There's no conflict with the coastal erosion hazard line. So this is what John said, it's a stretch.
Wait, could we put that up and show?
But happy
Yeah.
to.
Can you do that?
The drawings speak for themselves, Mark.
I did look at the
That's-
drawing. I thought there was construction activity south of the
yeah, I
coastal
mean,
erosion
how-
hazard line.
How are these 2 piles right here? And if you don't wanna answer.
Wait, can we put it up on
So-
the screen? Because we would
So
like to
as
see that
far
drawing.
as structural, Luke, as far as structural engineering, I hired a structural engineer.
Right.
At your request, and this is something that we typically don't do at this stage. We're kind of at, DD, and you know this pretty well. So we hired a structural engineer. My drawing is a diagram. It clearly states a diagram.
Right.
And the details of my drawing refer to the structural engineering drawings.
Right.
So if you have specific questions about the nature of the piling, if you look at my drawing, you refer to the structural engineer's drawing.
Right, and I'm looking at the structural engineer's drawing, cross-referencing it, we can see that this is where.
But let's just, can we put, Bruce, do you have that capacity to put on the screen your,
Our drawing's right on the table.
and we're
so-
talking about the engineering drawing that was submitted most recently.
And while he's talking, I think what you really have to consider, let me, just because I want to put this in the appropriate framework. You understand there is nothing in the coastal erosion hazard area law that prohibits construction per se and retrofitting things on an existing building, part of which is south of the coastal erosion hazard law. If you look at your own code, what does it say? What are the limitations? You can take a structure and you can expand it by 25%. We're nowhere near that. As a matter of fact, Mr. Daly from the DEC, and the DEC wrote this law many years ago in response to a letter that I wrote to him on a project for a single-family residence in Bridgehampton, said you could take this single-family residence, you could expand the footprint by 25%, and you could go up. Because what is the coastal erosion area law all about? It's all about coverage. Coverage. There are no height limitations in the coastal erosion hazard area law. There's no side yard setbacks in the coastal erosion hazard area law. The coastal erosion area law is all about coverage. When you talk about expansion of an pre-existing structure in the coastal erosion hazard area, what the code looks at is coverage. They try to minimize the amount of expansion of coverage south of the coastal erosion hazard area.
But John, it's not only coverage. Coverage is a major part of it, but if you read the code, it is structure, construction, and the or is the important linchpin here.
No,
Something that
we
re-
have to explain that because I don't know certainly there's construction standards that you have to comply with, but in terms of, being some sort of thing you can't do as of right, if you meet the standards for construction in the code, you can do that.
I don't have my laptop in front of me and the code in front of me today, but we did spend a lot of time looking at it today. I can promise you that it is coverage and then other
Well, you'd
other
have to
ramifications.
say so that I can respond to that.
Do you have the
Well, there are
email,
two different
Alex,
things.
by any
Well,
chance?
The email that I
First of all,
sent today?
And my response to you.
Well,
Yes, and I responded to that as well.
Okay.
what
Well,
was
maybe
that?
if we can.
First of
We're
all,
here
just
talking about
so
these
we
things,
have a
let's
record
talk
of
about
this,
them.
Alex, can you put on the screen the engineering drawing to which Luke is?
Well, I think that's what we're
But
looking at here.
I'd like to say on this question, if I can.
We'll get through it all.
Yeah, okay.
So Mark,
Is this the one that shows the pilings and?
so all these pilings, can you guys see my finger?
Yep.
All these pilings already exist in the ground. They're there. This house is already built, as you guys know. This piling, 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 all these pilings already exist.
Mm-hmm.
The only piling in my section that you requested,
Mhm.
Luke, and the whole point of this section was to show that there was no conflict with the
Right.
coastal erosion hazard line. And what I did on my drawing is I highlighted it in yellow to make it absolutely crystal clear.
Yes.
And the only piling is highlighted in yellow that we're adding. And it says, it references these structural drawings, and that's out here. We're not even close to the coastal erosion hazard line.
Delandro specifies 10 new pilings.
1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7.
7 is the one just above your title block. Move your finger to the left. Keep going. Down. To the left. That one right there, right? And then you have 2 more to the left. Okay, look, let's focus on those, right? Those 2 pilings, cross-reference that to your section. They are right up on top of the steps from what is now the garage to the next area.
I'm not sure why these are even in there, so that's, we're adding out here, so.
Well, that's what we understood too, and that's what we started to
Okay, so what do you say
investigate.
Yeah, Bruce,
That,
they're adding,
yes, the actual effect, okay, might be north of the coastal erosion hazard line, but the construction activity seems to us, for purposes of discussion with you collaboratively to some extent, aren't you in fact conducting construction activity south of the coastal erosion line?
Can I
So-
just ask a
so-
question, just for clarification, maybe I just misunderstood something, and I'm not asking, when you said you're not sure why they're there,
Yes.
does that mean maybe they shouldn't?
I'm not sure. Maybe they
I'm
should.
just asking,
So-
because maybe
so-
we're having a discussion about
so-
something that,
But I think there's a larger point to be made, is that all this is happening in the existing area, right? So renovations within this area are okay, right? I mean,
Not, I mean, that's what we're figuring
If you're just coming in
out.
with studs and framing members, but again, and if you don't wanna answer the question, we can go to the guys, to Coral, like, someone explain to me how those two piles, which the structural diagram is very clear that they are necessary to prevent uplift from the weight of your cantilever. Those things are going in there if you wanna come out this 3 feet, right? So how are you gonna get those pilings in there, given that the pilings are specified to be 10 feet long?
I'm still trying to figure out how this has anything to do with your jurisdiction.
Well, you're on the record as saying there's no construction south of the coastal.
I never said that. I never said that. Let me explain.
you just,
You
No, I didn't.
100%
No, I
did,
did
John.
not.
Wait, so
No,
is
I
there,
absolutely
is there
did not.
construction activity
did-
south of the
what?
coastal
Yes,
erosion
which
hazard
is
line?
permissible
there's
construction.
there's
Internal,
to the building.
yes.
Right, underground. What do you mean by internal?
There's a house that's there, that currently exists, and we're renovating internally to this house.
And
Does somebody
if you
think
could
that
read that, and
I'm
underneath-
doing that, I need a variance from the coastal erosion hazard line? Because I
very-
will
it's
tell
very
you
clear.
unequivocally that you're wrong.
Very clear in the code,
No, it's not.
100%.
What does it
Alex,
say?
let's pull it
What
up.
does it say? Because I've been doing this since 1989.
You've been doing it
Listen,
since
we-
No, no, no,
1983,
it's
we know
coastal
that.
erosion
Fine,
hazard.
fine, all
The
we're
first
trying to
time.
do right now is understand the project.
I actually
Okay.
wrote for the town the coastal erosion
John, that's
hazard law. So
fine.
let's see what it says, because this is the first time
So- and-
anyone has even suggested this. I think you're stretching
want
so
clar-
far.
John from Coral's reminding me, so there are existing pilings that are here, right?
Okay.
I don't believe we're putting anything new in here. This is,
we
And
need to
if
clarify
that's,
that.
if that's the case, then fine, but you submitted a drawing
It needs to be
showing
clarified.
extensive
that's
work,
what I'm
It
trying
needs
to
to be
figure
we'll
out.
clarify that.
which
We'll
you
clarify
were
it. And
surprised
again,
to see just
It
now,
needs to be clarified.
Bruce, and like, I'm just asking you questions, and you're catching an attitude
No,
with
no,
me.
no,
We're
no, no,
just trying
no,
to-
no, 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 no.
There's
What
no
he's trying to
attitude.
do is be respectful of the fact that we don't think you have any jurisdiction to talk about that, but we're trying to respond to it. So it's not an attitude. But if you want that clarified, we'll clarify it for
Okay.
you, Luke. That's fine.
To me,
Yeah.
the only person
Right.
on your side of things that can tell me
Don't
that
interrupt.
what is not in our purvey, your opinion is what matters
That's
to
not
me.
my opinion. This is 40 years of being a
No, but-
Just
but-
to be-
I- what I-
I'm
no, you
sorry, I'm sorry,
misunderstand my
if I
point.
could- If I could, just to clarify a few things. And I just want to make sure, if those are not going to be an issue,
Let's see
if
if they
those
are.
two, then maybe we don't have to have the
I
further
agree with you.
discussion.
I agree.
I do think that in terms of legal advice to the board, at the present time, I'll be the one giving them legal advice. I appreciate Mr. Bennett's thoughts, but I would be the one giving the board legal advice. I think that if we get clarity on these facts, this particular discussion may not, in the end, be helpful. We need to find out what's really being constructed there. I
I know.
can certainly follow up with Mr. Bennett, because I do have some thoughts about the applicability of the code.
Mhm.
We can go through it, and I don't think it's beneficial right now to do that.
Oh, I actually
but
think we
the-
should.
Well, and I disagree.
Okay, well, but you're
my
telling me
point
now.
is
Oh, no, no, no,
that
I want to do it on the
think
record.
that I don't,
I
quite
wanna do it on the
frankly,
record.
I don't care.
Well, I
My
want to do it.
point
I'm
is
entitled
that
to it.
the-
If you have a problem
No,
about
I
the
don't think you
applicability
are,
of the
sir.
law,
We
I
don't
don't
have to
think
do
you are.
it, we don't have to do it today.
I don't think you are. What I want to clarify is that fact right there, because it may not be a discussion we have to have.
Okay, but one of the board members brought up something about the applicability of or the necessity for a variance in the coastal erosion hazard law. I'd like to know what that thinking is.
Again,
I'm
the-
very
I
close to
have that
getting it.
here.
Okay,
Luke,
let him
if
do it.
you
Let him
want
get there.
But I think that
Let him get
Mr.
there.
Bennett will review it, and quite frankly, what's going to happen is there's going to be disagreement. There's going to be disagreement because.
No, but
and
you understand.
Mr. Bennett,
Mm.
the point is that I'm not so sure that the discussion would be constructive once we find out what those are. I think that there are three separate things in the code that we're talking about. You were talking about the 25%, which pertains to a major addition. I think the other two issues that are going to come up are regulated activities, unregulated activities, and maintenance.
Yeah.
And I think that those are the four things
I
that we're
understand all of
bouncing
those.
around right now. And my point is that we may not, that's a bridge that we may not need to cross depending upon the clarity.
And what
that's what I'm asking
what
you
I'm
to do.
saying is if there are issues that you think pertain here, it's basic due process that you have to tell me what they are so that I can respond to them.
Okay, here we
Okay.
go. Ready?
Okay.
Okay, 49.5, definitions, regulated activity. The construction, modification, restoration, or placement of a structure or major addition, which is what you were referring to, major addition, but that's preceded by construction, modification, restoration, or placement of a structure or major addition to a structure or any action or use of land which materially alters the condition of the land, including grading, excavating, dumping, mining, dredging, filling, or other disturbance of soil. So I agree with you 100% that the major addition aspect of this does not apply. But I argue that we do have regulated activity here, given that we do have construction, modification, or placement of a structure that materially alters the condition of land, including grading, excavating, and mining.
Okay, I'm so glad that you said that because I have a very, very, very appropriate response, and it's really the only response. That is a regulated activity. We're not saying that there aren't activities that are regulated when you're doing some work in the coastal erosion hazard area. They just have to meet the standards. And if I can meet the standards, I don't need a variance. So this is something that the building inspector in his capacity as the coastal erosion permit administrator should be looking at, not the zoning board of appeals. If the building inspector comes back at a later date after you grant this variance, which you should, and says, you know something, I don't think that they can meet the standards in the coastal erosion hazard area, then I have to come back and ask you for that. But the building inspector hasn't, nor could he have, shown that there's anything in this that I can't meet under the standards. The standards are one thing. If I can meet the standards, I don't need a variance, and I don't need a variance
we
here.
agree again that the administrator of the coastal erosion hazard line thinks that it does not meet the standards of
Where did
needing
he
a
say that?
variance.
Where did he say that?
It doesn't need a variance, and therefore you're
Oh,
not here
yes,
asking
okay,
for
fine.
that
I'm
variance,
sorry, I
right?
misunderstood.
But
It wasn't-
we have established that we are looking at the balancing and the potential detriment to the site. Whether or not it is formalized as a need for a variance,
What's
I
the
think
detriment to the
could I
site?
clarify
we're
that?
getting a little bit, I think,
No,
repetitive.
we're
Can-
right
if we
on.
could
We're
move on.
spot on.
Yeah,
What's the detriment to the site?
We, with our advice to council, in our deliberations, will consider the weight or the effect that this construction activity might have on our decision.
And what
we'll
is
follow-
that detriment?
And we
I
will
would
follow the advice of council, and please don't interrupt.
What is that detriment?
Can I
You
just
have to
ask-
tell me what it is.
Actually,
we
they
will.
don't, but can I just
Yes, they
ask?
do.
No, they don't, Councilman.
Okay,
And just to be clear,
What's in the record?
thank you, and I've also had the chance to review the cases you've cited, and some of them, quite frankly, refer to an incorrect standard. So, I would just, again, ask, and I believe you've indicated, if we can just get clarity on those, I
We can
think
do that,
that's
sure.
an important step.
Okay, I'd just like to move on to another point, because in your presentation, you discussed precedent. And the board does reserve, with the advice of its legal counsel, the context where you have laws being passed by the Board of Trustees that are addressing what the trustees, on behalf of the village, perceive as a problem. Residential construction in this area is too tall. So this is 1,155 cubic feet of relief. You refer to that as mere. Relative to some other applications, perhaps relative to our deliberations, we'll decide how substantial we find 1,155 cubic feet of relief. And as a precedent goes, there's a point where we lose the integrity of our zoning code if we continue to grant variance relief in the face of new legislation that the trustees are passing to address a problem. If each time the trustees pass a law because they see a problem and we just grant variance relief, we're working at odds with the interests of the village. So we are going to consider strongly the precedent that granting 1,155 cubic feet of relief, okay, would have on other applications that would come forward and say, as you did, hey, you just did it again, okay? This new law, okay, is not being enforced. It's not being observed. You're varying from it each time somebody comes in and asks for relief. So I will, as part of our deliberations, weigh heavily the possibility that if we grant relief here, there will be another applicant who comes in and says, you just did it again on 1430 Meadow Lane, and you did it with respect to their height, even though there was new legislation, and you did it with respect to pyramid law relief. So the fact that there are so many non-conforming residential structures in the area argues against granting another variance because it argues in a way that undermines the effect of new legislation. You can't have effective new legislation if the Zoning Board of Appeals is going to grant variance relief each time an applicant comes in and says, this was passed while I still had ownership, or this was passed while I already had a pre-existing tall building. We just want to expand that nonconformity. That's our job. Our job on behalf of the village is to maintain, in my view, the integrity of the village.
No, it's not. Your job,
let
what
me
you
see
just
my
said
job.
has
Let me-
absolutely nothing to do with your job. Absolutely nothing. Your job is to grant relief in an appropriate case. And mere citing
Mr.
of
Bennett,
prior
I think you're out
laws
of
has
order.
nothing to do. I'm not out of order. I'm responding.
You're telling
I'm
me,
responding.
you're
You're
telling me, or
dictating
you're
to this
suggesting
board
to
what our
me that
responsibilities
I'm not
I know it
supposed-
better than any of you.
I'm not supposed
Miss-
to consider this as a
You don't.
precedent.
Yes, I do.
You don't, Mr. Bennett, you
That is
don't, and that is,
completely out of
that is
line.
improper.
I'm not out of line.
You are,
What I just said
and you're
was
now
that you're
continuing
not the
to be out of
guardian of the
line.
code. You're the
So I'll
chairman of
keep
the zoning
talking to
board.
You're being out of line.
You're not the guardian of the code. I was responding.
No, you weren't,
He was
sir.
done
You-
and I
you
was
were-
responding.
No, you
Mr.
weren't
Bennett, let's
responding,
have a
you went
little
beyond that.
civility in this discussion.
When people
I'll
say
advise the
things
board
that
appropriately
are
with respect to
totally
what
outside of the
counsel-
scope of the law,
I will advise the
find
board
that
with
uncivil.
respect to legal. And I disagree, and I think you were being uncivil, sir, but the record will speak for itself. I'll advise
Yes,
the
it
board
will.
on the standards to be applied.
Do you have any questions, comments, concerns that you want to express? Then we'll ask Tom, and I think the applicant owes us some revised surveys, and we'll adjourn.
Well, first of all, I just wanted to say that I agree with your observations about our potential duty to uphold the law that's been put in place by the trustees. And we have to deliberate carefully with council about possible precedents of granting this variance, especially with the height that's being requested by the applicant. The second concern that I have is the elimination of the garage in the plan and what that's going to do in terms of creating parking there on site for up to 10 cars, because I think given the nature of the neighborhood on Meadow Lane, that I think could be a real concern. And the last thing I'll say is, Mr. Bennett, we would really appreciate some civility in this discussion. We all here on the zoning board are basically public servants who are trying to uphold certain responsibilities that we have to the village. And we certainly grant you a lot of civility in this process, and I would encourage you to please act in such a respectful tone of the work we're trying to do here. Thank you very much.
I would respectfully disagree with your characterization. When somebody says something that is totally a fabrication of the law, I find that, as a lawyer with an intellectual bent, to be incredibly uncivil.
I think her point is that you can respond in a more conversational manner. We're all friends here. We're not enemies. We see each other on the street. It's a conversation, and you've been before us a lot, and sometimes, you know, we're completely with your reasoning and your opinions, and sometimes we're not, and that's the way it goes. But we should keep it conversational.
I've found this board as recently concentrated to be nothing but obstructionist.
Mr. Bennett?
That's fine to feel that way. That's fine. And
Operating outside of the boundaries of the law.
and as long as you're expressing that, to me at least, in a conversational manner, your opinion is very valid to me.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Tom, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I think my colleagues covered it very well, thank you.
Okay, I'll motion to adjourn for all
Well, I would
purposes.
suggest that since all you need is that
I'm
clarification
going
on
to
the
motion
piles,
to adjourn for all
I'd like
purposes.
to make a
You can
request.
say whatever you want.
Please, thank you. Okay. I'd like to request that, given the fact that all you need is information on the piling system, that we just simply close it for a written determination.
I also requested a revised survey.
Okay. And what is the purpose of that? Because the parking, if I can conform with the parking standards on the code, which, as you know, are merely 10 feet from the front yard, there's really no purview that you have. You can't. I gave you that Sandy International versus Corman case, which I litigated against this board some time ago. You can't condition a grant of a variance relief on prohibiting me from doing something that is otherwise legal under the code. There's plenty of room for parking on this property, and the parking, like it or not, and I have my own thoughts about the wisdom of this, but like it or not, 10 years ago, at the request of the then building inspector, the requirements to where you can put, the limitations to where you can put parking on a property were incredibly loosened. And, you know, the ARB has some issues with that. Maybe you have some issues with it, but that's where we stand with the code. So you're asking me, there's plenty of room for parking on this. What's the purpose for asking that? How would that have any nexus between whether or not you should grant this relief?
Well, the nexus I am drawing, which you deserve to know, is there or are there negative effects, you know, to this project? One of the potential negative effects for the purposes of our deliberations is you're eliminating a garage and you're putting parking in the front yard. So we will discuss as part of our deliberations whether that's enough of a detrimental effect, together with whatever detrimental effects we discover, would outweigh the minimal benefit. But I'm not here to argue with you about our
Mark, I'm not
administrative
adding any
process.
bedrooms, so I'm not increasing the amount of parking spaces that are required. I could tear down the garage tomorrow as of right and decide to park all the cars outside.
Bruce, aren't you adding a bedroom on the first floor?
No.
It's 3 to 3. We're expanding 3 bedrooms. I'm surprised you're even asking that question after the third hearing.
Except that regardless of
Are
what,
you adding a bedroom on the first floor?
No.
You're not?
The office is technically a bedroom, right? An office.
So you're just changing the nomenclature. You're saying an office.
Right.
You're just now calling it a bedroom, even though.
Same size room, we're calling an office a bedroom.
We're not adding anything.
An office would be counted as a bedroom.
Yeah,
No, I
just
understand.
In certain circumstances,
Yeah.
such as this.
So
Well,
tomorrow,
well, whatever
at their
they're,
whim, they could tear down the garage and decide to park outside fully.
of course,
We're not
that's not the application that's
No,
before the
but
board. The
you have to-
application that's before the board is this application,
That's not true.
and this isn't the application before the board?
No.
This is the application
No,
before the board
your
that
nexus
you've been
is totally
presenting.
off.
And
I'm
the
saying-
board will make its determination based on the 5 factors under the village law when it makes its determination.
And all I was saying that you cannot take as a detriment, and this is the case I litigated, you cannot take as a detriment something that I can do as a matter of right. That's not a detriment
Okay, well, you
under
can
law.
submit your case
I
law to
did.
Jeff, and then
I
we
have
did, and I
talk
further
about it.
expanded on it for you.
Okay.
And I told you that you could take
I
down the
have-
garage tomorrow, no new parking spaces, and decide on their own whim to park outside fully. So that's not a detriment. That's not a legally cognizable detriment under the New York State town law, the village law, or the case law surrounding it.
And just so that, just to round it out, and that's also not before the board. Whatever they choose to do tomorrow by whim, if they withdraw this application and go to the building department to take a different step, that's up to them. This is the application that's before the board now. I believe there was a motion on the table
So
presented.
I'll just motion to adjourn for all purposes. Can I have a second?
To what date?
It would be to the next available public hearing, so September 12th, is that what we
September
decided?
Are you here September 12th, or are you?
I'm here on 1750 and some other ones, yep.
So motion to adjourn for all purposes. This is,
It's number.
case number 3158, 1430 Meadow Lane. We will adjourn to September 12th. Is that the date, Alex?
Yes, I believe so.
Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, moving on, we have case number 3160, Gary Flanagan, 20 Hillcrest Lane. The applicant requests a second adjournment. I would motion to accept the applicant's request for a second adjournment. Can I have a second?
Second.
That would be to September 12th as well.
And that would also be to September 12th. Second, all in favor of approving the applicant's request for a second adjournment to September 12th in case number 3160, Gary Flanagan, please say aye.
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 Then we are motioning to adjourn case number 3164, Robert Kornstein and Shari Gottesman, 43 Bailey Road, because we do not have a quorum to hear that particular case. Julie McCormick being absent and Luke Farron and myself recusing ourselves from that application. So I will motion to adjourn case number 3164, Robert Kornstein and Shari Gottesman, 43 Bailey Road, for lack of a quorum. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are motioning to accept applicant's request for a first adjournment to September 12th in the case of Victoria Khan, 107 Woolley Street, case number 3165. I motion to accept the applicant's request for adjournment to September 12th. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so moving on, do we have the applicant available to present case number 316374 White Street, or should we
He's
motion
in the
to
waiting
adjourn
room
that?
raising his hand.
Oh, great, okay. Didn't mean to interrupt his festivities. Can we let him in? Thank you.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes,
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Okay. Am I supposed to talk now, or you want to ask me a question, or I don't understand?
I think you're intended to present your application.
Yes. I'd like to start by thanking you guys for doing this thankless job. I don't know how you do it. I've been listening to the last two sessions and last time and this and today, and I don't know how you do it. The 74 White Street initially was built as a three-family house. That's the original CFO. And if you remember, I came to the board like 14 or 15 months ago during the COVID area, because the commercial tenant upstairs was continuously sleeping in the house, and I requested to change it into residential, and you were kind enough to grant me the residential use of the second floor. After I got your approval, I went to the village to get a permit, and the fire marshal asked me to get an engineer to draw the plans, even though I'm not removing any walls or adding any walls upstairs or doing anything. I'm not even painting upstairs. He asked me to get an engineer because he does not himself write the codes. He just enforces the codes. So I went in and I hired an engineer, who drew the fire separation, and all what he recommended was a central fire alarm and something about a chimney or something like that. The fire marshal disagreed with him and insisted that I have to install sprinkler system in the ceiling, which is costly and it will destroy the house because the house is plaster and it's not really what the engineer recommended. As they were going back and forth, the fire marshal and engineer ends up suffering back injury requiring 2 operations and forced me for early retirement. So the first floor that has been used as my office, I no longer can work. I have to do something about it. And to avoid the extreme cost and unnecessary installation of a sprinkler system, I requested to change the first floor into also a residential floor, and this way we can have at least an available unit for a middle income family to help a little bit with the village, the traffic, and also to avoid really the installation of the so expensive fire sprinkler system. So that's where we are now, and that's my request.
Alex, can you provide us with context on this?
Sure. So I understand that this was originally a dwelling unit, as the applicant mentioned. At one point, I believe its current certificate of occupancy is for office on both floors. There was a request to do a second floor residential that was approved by this board, but as was mentioned, there are certain fire separation requirements when you have a mixed-use building like that, and it seemed like that would be onerous. So instead, they're making an application to go entirely residential and have 2 residential units, one on the ground floor and one on the second floor. So under the zoning ordinance, that's considered a 2-family use. That use is permissible as a special exception use in the office district, which is why they're here for the Board of Appeals requesting that special exception for a 2-family dwelling. The other part of their application is an area variance because the office district carries a very high minimum square foot for dwelling unit requirement that would require almost an acre to have a 2-family house. So they're asking that to be reduced to what their current lot size is to be enabled this to be a 2-family dwelling with a unit on the ground floor and a unit on the second floor.
And what are our standards for the special use exception?
Sure. So, I just pulled them up. Can I just read through them for you?
Mm-hmm.
So, the general standards are that I should speak into this so the gentleman can hear me. Sir, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So I'm looking at 116-22. So first we have general standards for every special exception use. The Board of Appeals or trustees, this comes before the Board of Appeals, shall determine that such use would be in harmony with and promote the general purposes and intent of this chapter, and I can go back to that. The plot area is sufficient, appropriate, and adequate for the use and the reasonably anticipated operation and expansion thereof. The proposed use would not prevent the orderly and reasonable use of adjacent properties, particularly where they are in a different district. And I think, Alex, if you could just clarify for the board, as you move away from this property, the adjacent district obviously is residential. Several houses.
Yes,
further?
I believe that's right.
Actually, the house immediately next to me on White Street
Is,
got abandoned and became a residential
right,
community.
so that would be, I think that's
One side of
76.
everything.
Right, so that's 76 White, I believe? Okay. The site is,
I believe so.
sir, if I could, let me just finish the conditions that the board looks at, and then certainly you can continue. The site is particularly suitable for the location of such use in the community. The characteristics of the proposed use are not such that its proposed location would be unsuitably near to a church, school, theater, recreational area, or other place of assembly. F, the proposed use, particularly in the case of a non-nuisance industry, conforms with the chapter definition of the special exception use where such definition exists, or with generally accepted definition of such use where it does not exist in this chapter. G, access facilities are adequate for the estimated traffic from public streets and sidewalks so as to assure the public safety and to avoid traffic congestion. And further, vehicular entrances and exits shall be clearly visible from the street and not be within 75 feet of the intersection of street lines at a street intersection, except under unusual circumstances. H, all proposed curb cuts have been approved by the street or highway agency which has jurisdiction. I, there are off-street parking and truck loading spaces, at least in the number required by the code. The next part is inapplicable. It refers to employees or patrons of a business. J, there will be adequate buffer yards and screening provided where necessary to protect adjacent properties. K, adequate provision would be made for the collection and disposal of stormwater runoff from the site, sanitary, and removal of refuse and waste. L, no outdoor sales, lot, rental, equipment storage, or display area would be permitted, except in an HB district, which is not applicable here. The proposed use recognizes and provides for the further specific conditions and safeguards required for particular uses. And in any application, this would not be applicable here, that deals with the Board of Trustees. And I'll just return for a moment if I could. The purpose, I think I had actually read that. So I will stop there. Those are the conditions that the board takes into account.
And I'll add to that that there are no unique special exception criteria for this particular use, as some other special exception uses have. And also, if the board were to approve the special exception and the associated area variance, it would go to the planning board for a site plan review.
And just to make that a little bit clear, so the special kinds of things would come up, for example, if there's a laundry or an automobile laundry, those have particular requirements that the board could look at or conditions to look at, but that's not applicable here, so I won't review all of those. Thanks for pointing that out, Mr. Waller.
So, Alex, site plan, planning board may have comments on where the parking exists on the property and things like that?
That's correct. Those are the kind of things I would expect them to look at. The
Okay.
site has been used as an office and has sufficient parking for an office, probably might have more parking than would be necessary for a
Sure.
two-family home, so that's something they may consider.
A question for you, Dr. Alam, and I'm speaking only for myself. I don't know if the board would agree with me or disagree on this. But would you be willing to, as a condition of our approval, only rent these units out on a year-long annual basis and guarantee no summer, no winter rentals, and no Airbnb short-term rentals?
Absolutely, sir. The whole idea really is to make such a beautiful, it's a beautiful old Victorian house, to make this unit available for a middle-income family. No, absolutely no summer rental, absolutely none of that stuff. I have no interest in.
I appreciate
just
that.
wanna make it-
Is that, could we condition it like that?
The code does have provisions about rental and rental registry. Any condition this board puts on would have to be reasonably attached to the grant.
I mean, I think you're allowed to do a summer and a winter rental, right?
Right.
Like without any special permissions. I think, transient rentals would not be allowed.
So
But-
the village currently does not have a rental permit requirement to rent out a property.
Interesting.
But is it a reasonable condition that we could
You have
attach?
my word for it.
Can I approach from the?
Yeah, I mean, perhaps. The goal of the village is to bring
Right.
year-round rentals into the village.
He agreed to that, but I don't.
You don't think it could be part of the decision?
I kind of think it's a bit of a, it's not attached to the land as much as that other.
Okay.
I can research it for you, but
Look, it's not a make or break for me.
Do you have any questions?
No, I don't think so, although I do think that Luke's raised a good point about the yearly rentals. But I understand that the village has no current, law on the book about that, right?
That's right, right. There's a rental registry that's optional that has to do with how rent is collected, but there's currently no permit to rent your property in the village for any length of time.
Here's my question for you, Jeff. I have probably no objection whatsoever as long as the house itself stays as it is. Can we limit it, our decision for approval to the house as it is? In other words, if they ever wanted to expand it or knock it down and build another house, this special use does not carry forward with it? Because the attractiveness to me is that he's really not changing anything. He has the existing building.
Right, so any condition the board puts would have to be reasonably attached, and any condition would run with the land. I think that a condition could be that it's being granted on these plans as presented to this board at this time. If the gentleman chooses to expand the structure, change the structure, that's going to change the type of variance, because one of the conditions this board is looking at, in terms of this use, is, for example, parking, traffic, congestion. So you're taking that into account based upon this. So if the condition is consistent with that, and I'm just looking down to just give me 1 second, Chairman, if you will. Well, the bottom line is, I will stick with what I just said, which is, I think this board can say, if we grant this, presuming the board does, we grant it on the plans as we have now for this structure with this presentation. If there's going to be a change that would in any way affect the manner of use, I can't believe I'm losing the word, the congestion that could be created as a result, the intensity of the use, that this would need to come back before the board.
Mm-hmm.
So
And to that, I would just caution, because it does have to go to site plan review, the site conditions may change in that process. You know, parking may be eliminated, additional plantings may be provided. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that you have the architectural plans in front of you, but the site layout itself may evolve as part of this process.
which is a good point. I mean, I think if this board includes a condition that it's on the plans that this board has, that could be made subject to site review by the planning board. But I think that the chair's point is, looking at this structure, the board may feel that it meets with the conditions in this code, but that would change if it was a different structure, a different intensity of use. So I think that's a fair
The structure
condition.
itself?
Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Alam, are you there?
Yes, sir, and if I just want to chime in, I have no intention of changing it or expanding it or demolishing it. I just, I was forced out of being able to work because of my surgery, so I just want to rate it as a full-time or year-round or whatever it is for a decent family. That's all my intentions. If you want to put condition that I don't expand it or do, that's just fine by me. I don't have any intention of that.
And Dr. Alam, just to clarify, you mean 2 families, right? There's going to be 2 residential units here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Tom, do you have any questions or concerns or comments?
No, that would be excellent discussion, and I agree with where you all are headed.
I guess, why don't we motion to close it for all purposes, or close it for decision? So I'll motion to close case number 3163, 74 White Street LLC, 74 White Street, for decision. Could I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then we have one last, or do we?
Yeah. Happy birthday, by the way, Dr. Alam.
Yes, happy birthday, sir.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry, who's that?
Everybody.
Everybody.
It's a,
Thank you so much. I canceled my affair.
I hope,
So, because the last time I waited and finally I had to go to a meeting, so I carried the phone with me, and it was unfortunate I couldn't get in touch. It's a bit frustrating. Okay, thank you so much.
have a good night, sir. So we'll motion to adjourn, accept the applicant's request for a first adjournment to September 12th in the case of 1750 Waterview LLC, 1750 Meadow Lane. This is, let's see, as a result of the memorandum drafted by our environmental planning consultant, reviewing the submissions for 1750 Meadow Lane, in which our consultant concluded that we need complete, accurate, and consistent information with respect to the proposed project in order to proceed. And the applicant's request for adjournment is so that they can comply with a detailed list of requests from our environmental planning consultant detailed in their memorandum received by the Southampton Village Building Department on August 1st. So can I have a second to accept the applicant's request for a first adjournment to September 12th in case number 3155, 1750 Waterview LLC?
Second that.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So a motion to adjourn the public hearing of the Zoning Board of Appeals, August 8th, 2023. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor of adjourning for all purposes,
Aye.
say aye.
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 Thank you, Tom. The connection was crystal clear.
Oh, good.
Thanks, and Tom, while you're on, just a reminder, if anybody wants to go to that training on October 10th, to let our office know, and we'll handle the registration for you.
Yeah, Tom, we're not going to have a meeting on October 10th, so if you want to attend training.
I heard that. Are there others? All the trainings interfere with our meeting.
Yeah, but we're not going to have a meeting on October 10th.
I guess I'll do it on October 10th.
And-
So I'll be with all of
You're
you.
going to do it?
I'm covered for the year.
You're covered for the year?